Welcome to this talk on paratransit accommodations.
I'm doing fraud, got that bag, yeah, I'm transporting. I got that bag on me, like I'm transporting. He dropped the mixtape, thought I would've reposted. I ain't posted mixtape cause I don't shorty. I be booted to the morning, PM to the morning.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie Van. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Vietnamese woman with long dark hair wearing a gray fleece and a white tank top sitting in front of a colorful bookshelf. I'm an interventional pain management specialist and assistant professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. I also give talks on disability and medicine all the time, so thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. The learning objectives for today's talk. We're going to confront inherent bias and how ableism impacts access for people with disabilities. We're going to learn how to replace biased terminology with more inclusive and preferred language. We're going to become familiar with specific access needs for people with disabilities, and overall, we're all here to prioritize safe, accessible navigation around campus. So I always like to ask people what they think disability looks like. This is a safe space. Just picture the first thing that comes to mind that pops into your head when you think about the word disability. What does it look like to you? The law defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Now, this was defined back in 1990 with the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Fast forward to 2010 with the Affordable Care Act, where disabilities definition became a little bit more specific. So a yes to any of these items is considered a disability. Deafness or serious difficulty in hearing, blindness or serious difficulty in seeing, serious difficulty in concentrating, remembering, or making decisions because of a physical, mental, or emotional condition, 5 years and up, serious difficulty walking or climbing stairs, 5 years and up, difficulty dressing or bathing, 5 years and up, and also difficulty doing errands alone, like visiting the doctor's office or going shopping because of a physical, mental, or emotional condition, 15 years and up. So when we revisit this question of what does disability look like, it can really look like so many different things, and it's not the same for any individual person. I really like this particular definition put out by the National Council on Disabilities Health Equity Framework. They define disability as a natural part of the human condition, which occurs across all age, gender, racial, ethnic, language, and social groups. Here's a nice representation of the diversity that is disability. Pictured are cartoon people of different ages, skin types, body types, clothing choices, different mobility aids around them, different people around them. This is a wonderful depiction of how diverse the disability community is. And these illustrations are from the cover of a book called Demystifying Disability by Emily Ladau. Highly recommend you check that out. So I really want to drive home the point that disability is diversity. In the top left-hand corner, there's the older disability pride flag. Against a black background, there's 5 rainbow zigzag stripes representing 5 types of disability: blue, yellow, white, red, and green. And the zigzag represents how people with disabilities have to navigate around barriers. On the upper right-hand corner is the newer disability pride flag. It's a little more modern looking, it's more pastel in shade, but against a gray background, we have the same 5 colors, red, yellow, white, blue, and green, diagonally striped across, but it's missing the zigzag. So the disabled community is the largest and most diverse minority group, and anyone can join it at any time, which is pretty unique. Disabilities can be apparent or invisible. Congenital means you're born with it, or acquired later in life. In terms of prevalence, about 1 in 6 or 17% of children in the US ages 3 to 17 years old have one or more developmental disabilities, and about 1 in 4 US adults have a disability. In the world's population, about 1 billion people, or 15% of the world's population, experience some form of disability. And as you can imagine, disability can impact a person's identity, medical care, personal assistance needs, mental health, family and social interactions, and lifestyle. So disability can really be intersectional across cultures, ages, lifestyles, you name it. All right, so let's check our ableism. We've heard of racism, we've heard of sexism, classism. What is ableism? Ableism, I like this definition, is the oppression, prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination against disabled people on the basis of actual or presumed disability. There's also this belief in ableism that people are superior or inferior, or have better quality of life, or have lives more valuable or worth living on the basis of actual or perceived disability. This definition comes from Lydia X.C. Brown. They're a disabled scholar out of Georgetown. So when we think about how ableism can manifest, it actually comes in many different forms. On an individual level, ableism can manifest as being nervous or awkward or disturbed around people with obvious differences in disabled bodies. Ableism can mean making assumptions about what a disabled person can or cannot do. Ableism can be perceiving a disability as a personal tragedy and expressing pity towards someone with a disability. There are commonly used slurs that are very ableist, things like dumb, idiot, spaz, that can be very offensive. When it comes to taking care of people with disabilities or providing services to people with disabilities, it can be ableist to address only caregivers or family members instead of the disabled person themselves. There's behavior called infantilization, where someone with a disability is treated as if they're less mature than they are. Ultimately, all of these behaviors lead up to someone feeling dehumanized, and this is the real harm in ableism. These examples are derived from an article by Dainani et al., published in 2022 out of Stanford Medicine. All right, so I just want to give a little note on lifelong learning, because language around disability and any marginalized population is an ever-evolving issue. We're having very important conversations right now, and we're still trying to figure things out. By the same time next year, this language may be outdated or inappropriate that we're talking about now. But communication and behavior are major ways paratransit providers can consciously counter bias. So when you're unsure about preferred language, just ask. All right, let's consider someone's specific access needs. Think about someone who has a mobility disability or a hearing disability, a vision disability, a communication disability, a cognitive disability, or a psychological disability. Think about what specific things each of these types of disabilities might benefit from when using the paratransit services. Hopefully you're thinking of at least one or two good ideas. I like to think of specific access needs. So people with mobility needs, they might use aids like a wheelchair or a cane or a walker. People with hearing disabilities might use hearing aids, or they might use American Sign Language to communicate, or speech-to-text technology. A lot of that is available on our phones these days. Someone with a visual disability might use a white cane in the community. They might benefit from large print font, or audio description, or even signage in Braille. Someone with a communication disability might use a communication board, for example, to indicate without words what they mean. Someone with cognitive access needs or a cognitive disability might benefit from using simplified language in their interactions. And someone with psychological access needs might benefit from trauma-sensitive interactions or a sensory-safe environment, like minimizing loud noises. All right, so here's the one takeaway slide. If you don't get anything out of any other part of this talk, I really hope you take away something from this slide, which really encourages you to use preferred, helpful, and respectful terminology when working with anyone, including people with disabilities. So on the left, I have words in red. Instead of these words, I prefer using the words on the right, which is say this in bold and dark blue font. So instead of saying normal, I prefer to use the word baseline because most people are trying to work back to their baseline or have a certain baseline they want to convey to you. Instead of saying someone has special needs or is differently abled or is crippled or handicapped, it's usually preferred to say someone has a disability or they're disabled, or someone might just prefer to refer to their specific access needs that they benefit from. Instead of using the term wheelchair bound, which sounds very restrictive and lacking of independence, it's much preferred to say someone is a wheelchair user. Instead of saying someone is hearing impaired or vision impaired, it's preferred to refer to someone as being deaf or hard of hearing, or simply blind or having low vision. Instead of describing someone as emotional, dramatic, or crazy, it's much preferred to describe someone who needs coping support or someone who has a history of trauma. That's much more respectful and still accurate. Instead of saying someone's tangential, rambling, or long-winded, it's much preferred to say someone needs frequent redirection. Instead of saying stump, people with amputations, either congenital or acquired, can be referred to as having residual limbs. And instead of saying someone is homeless, it's preferred to say someone is facing housing or financial insecurity, or they are houseless. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but I hope you've learned at least a couple of new terms here that sound more inclusive and respectful in your everyday language dealing with people. I want to refer you to some more comprehensive guides on inclusive language. The one on the left is from the American Psychological Association. The one in the middle is from the American Medical Association. And the one on the far right is from the National Center on Disability and Journalism. So the QR codes are featured here and go into much deeper detail on things like disability and inclusive language of many marginalized populations. Okay, so what's the bottom line? Everybody needs help and support in some form or another. We cannot assume anything about someone's ability, intelligence, or needs. We cannot force people to disclose their disabilities, their diagnoses, but we can use respectful and inclusive language. In a paratransit context, we cannot touch the people using the paratransit services, but we can still be supportive of their needs. It's always best to ask what is preferred and how you can support them best. Thank you so much for listening to this talk on accessible paratransit strategies. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about this content or want to dive in deeper. I have more content like this on my YouTube channel. It's called This Ability Clinic on YouTube. The QR code is featured here. And I interview people with disabilities. I watch movies and TV shows representing disability. And we have a lot of fun over there. So feel free to check that out, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and learning.
I'm doing fraud, got that bag, yeah, I'm transporting. I got that bag on me like I'm transporting. He dropped the mixtape, thought I would've